Greetings booktube, my name is Jalen and I'm the Bookish Geek. Today I have for you my August wrap up. I read 10 books in August, most of them in the first 2.5 weeks. After that I kept picking up books but I just wasn't sticking with them. I would start them, get 20 pages in and then put them back down again and pick up another book and get 20 pages in and then put it down again. So I'm a bit disappointed that I didn't get to read a bit more, but I did have about 3 days where I was just solidly reading, so I can't really complain about that. Also today I'm wearing my Hufflepuff shirt. I did get sorted into Gryffindor. I've been sorted into Gryffindor twice, but I see myself more as a Hufflepuff. I do try and embrace my Gryffindor side as well, but I am definitely more of a Hufflepuff. So anyway, the first book I read this month was Jade City by Fonda Lee. I talked about this a bit in my book haul, that's the word I was looking for, or words even. So just to give a brief description of this, it's set in a world where Jade is used and bought and stolen and smuggled, and it gives people superhuman abilities, but only certain people can wield it. But there's a new drug that's come out and that enables other people to be able to use it. It follows one main family and it follows different members of that family, and then you follow a smuggler who is wanting to be able to harness Jade. But it's mainly about the family in this and their problem with another clan that are trying to seize control. So the way I saw this described was the Godfather with martial arts, which I think is probably the best description for it. So there's a lot of really good world building in this. It's very thorough with a lot of things. If you want a fantasy book that has a lot of great and individual characters with some martial arts sprinkled in as well, I would definitely suggest this. It's a bit of a slow start, I'll have to admit, but I think it's because there's so much to cover in this world and about the families and all their relationships to each other and all that. I really did enjoy this. I can't wait for the second book. I'm really looking forward to rereading it because I think I flew through it a bit too quickly, so I didn't probably take in as much as I probably could have, because it is quite a hefty book as well, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and I'm going to be taking it so my mum can read it because I think she's going to love it as well. Also, I think Hilo might be my favourite character in this. I can't wait to see what happens in the second book, that's all I'm going to say. So next I read Anything is Possible by Elizabeth Strout. So this is a collection of short stories. It follows a bunch of characters in a rural town in Illinois. When I was reading this, it references a character called Lucy Barton. Halfway through it I was thinking, I don't really know what's going on and why people keep referencing her and nobody's really explaining anything. But there's actually a book by Elizabeth Strout called I Am Lucy Barton, I think it's called that, and this is basically a companion almost to that. You could read it as a standalone like I did, but I feel like as if I would have enjoyed it more if I had read I Am Lucy Barton. Basically Lucy Barton, she had a bit of a rough childhood. She grew up, she became a writer, and then she ended up moving to New York City. So this is about all the people that got left behind. Like I said, I didn't really enjoy this that much, and it felt like a bit of a slog. I didn't really sympathise with any of the characters, or I didn't really find them interesting. Some of them were just downright annoying, so I didn't enjoy this one that much. And maybe I might try reading I Am Lucy Barton and then coming back to this and then seeing what I think of it then. So we'll see with this one. But for now, I'm not that fussed. Next I have Volume 1 of Saga. It's by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. So this is an epic fantasy, I would say. All you really need to know is that a baby has been born, and unfortunately the parents are on opposite sides of a war and neither of their governments really approve of this, so they've sent out bounty hunters to try and get hold of the family So we're following them on the run, basically. So I did really enjoy this. Like I said, I can't really say an awful lot because the first volume, you never quite know how it's going to go. So I'll see what I think of the other volumes. But I feel like as if I'm going to really enjoy it. Ugh, bring that stack over here. Next, I read Postcards from the Edge by Carrie Fisher. So I believe this is part biography, part fiction. In the beginning, she has overdosed and she's in a rehab centre, and it's all about that and about her coming out afterwards and how she does with Hollywood and relationships and all that sort of thing. I did really enjoy this. Plot-wise, there's not an awful lot going on in this, but as you'd expect, it's really funny, it's really relatable, there's so many quotable moments in this. It was such a fun read. If you love Carrie Fisher, I would definitely recommend picking this up. The only thing I didn't really like in it is at the beginning you have Suzanne's point of view and then you have another character called Alex, and his point of view was almost draining to read because he is another character who is addicted to drugs and ends up going to the rehab centre, but being in his head was just so emotionally draining. I could feel the life being sucked out of me whilst I was reading his parts. But they're only in the beginning, and I kind of feel like as if that was the point. He was meant to be written like that, you know, to almost feel how it must feel to be wanting drugs all the time. This is the second book of hers that I've read. The other one I read was Wishful Drinking. Obviously that's another really good book. And if you, like I said, if you're looking for a funny read, this is one to go for. So next I read The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. I've said this before, so I'll say it again. I keep seeing this sort of spoken of as a collection of fairy tale retellings, and Angela Carter herself has said they weren't intended to be as retellings. They are original stories based on myths, legends, fairy tales, that sort of thing. So with this you have very gothic, very dark, very sexual stories with a feminist edge. You have The Bloody Chamber, which is about Bluebeard, and you have Little Red Riding Hood, you have vampires, and you have some tree spirit, whose name I can't remember, Elk, right? Elk something. Puss in Boots, and Beauty and the Beast. So the main story, The Bloody Chamber, I really enjoyed. I've never heard of the tale of Bluebeard before. Obviously I've heard of Bluebeard, and I never knew the story behind it. So I really enjoyed The Bloody Chamber I think the most. But I also really enjoyed The Lady of the House of Love, which is a vampire story. I thought it was a really good twist on the usual vampire stories that you see. One thing I will say about Angela Carter's writing, which I think would put off quite a few people, is that she doesn't really write a whole lot of dialogue. So you will see a whole page maybe with one line of dialogue, but it was still hugely enjoyable to me. I love the imagery of this. I feel like this is one where there's almost so many little subtleties in it that you could read it maybe 100 times over and still find new things in it. So I feel like as if this is one I'm going to reread in October. I feel like it'll be perfect for that time. If you're wanting something different, which isn't your bog standard YA retelling, then I definitely would suggest this. And I'm looking forward to reading more of her work. Next book I read is 24-Hour Party People by Toni Wilson. Nearly poked out my eye with that. So I picked this up because I really love the film 24-Hour Party People. It came out, I can't remember when it came out, so I won't finish that sentence. So this is about the story of Factory Records and the Hacienda in Manchester. So basically this is a story of how not to run a record label and a nightclub, because everything that could possibly go wrong does go wrong. So in this we follow Toni Wilson, who is a TV reporter for Granada Studios in the 70s. One night him and his friends go to an early Sex Pistols gig and they are absolutely blown away by this strange new music, so they decide to set up a record label. One of the bands that they sign is Joy Division. So tour bus just went past. You just see me holding my book. It talks a lot about Joy Division and their eventual change to New Order, and then it talks again about the Happy Mondays. It talks a lot about rave culture in Manchester and the drug problems, and basically all the things that they do to mess up pretty much everything. So one thing I will say about this is I really love the film, and this is pretty much exactly the same. This was written after the film came out. I found Tony to be more annoying in this than he is in the film. In the film, he's almost like he's annoying, but he's played by Steve Coogan, so you can kind of expect it a little bit. But in this, I found it harder to feel sorry for him, almost. I would say if this is the sort of thing that you're interested in and you haven't seen the film, definitely watch the film first. I feel like I got more from it by watching the film first, because a lot of the funny scenes just play out better, I think, on film. So it's an okay read, but it wasn't great. If you want something similar, I would suggest How Not to Run a Club by Peter Hook. I think that's what it's called. But I think that would probably be a better representation of what happened. Probably, I don't know, I haven't actually read it. I have got it, I think. I should probably see if I've got it. Next, I read Elephants Can Remember by Agatha Christie. So, here's the thing with this one. This one is a Hercule Poirot. This one is a Poirot. I can't say it properly. This is a book. I read Murder on the Orient Express around Christmas time, I think, and I really, really enjoyed it. It'd been years since I've seen the Peter Ustinov version, so I couldn't remember what the twist was, so I really, really enjoyed it. So in this, you don't really follow Poirot that much. It's more about his friend, Mrs. Oliver. One day she's approached by this woman, and her son is planning to marry a woman who many years earlier, her parents had both been found shot dead at the bottom of a cliff. But nobody knows how they were killed, or of course they knew how they were killed. Nobody knows who killed them. We got there. All they know is that they were both shot dead. And I do have to say, I did actually figure it out about halfway through. I had an inkling about how it was going to end. It was still enjoyable, but I did read that this came out in 1972, which was 4 years before Agatha Christie actually died. So this is a really late book. It really threw me off as well because it talks about being set in the 60s, and I was not expecting that. It didn't quite have the same vibe as Murder on the Orient Express, and then there were None, which I have read some of but not all of. But this isn't going to deter me. Like I said, it was still enjoyable. I feel like as if it was less about the twist and more about family and relationships and all that sort of thing. So it wasn't a bad book, I'll say. So I'm probably going to look slightly different now because I just had to stop recording to go and answer the door. So that's why it'll probably look a bit different now. Anyway, the next book I read was The Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. So this follows our main character Zaylee. Zaylee lives in a world where magic used to exist, and her mother was a reaper, but she was murdered when Zaylee was a child. So Zaylee and her brother Zane and Amari, who is the daughter of the oppressive king, they go and try to restore magic. That's the bare basic plot of this. I have to say this is probably the easiest 500 pages I have ever read. I absolutely flew through this. To say I enjoyed it is an understatement. So this is based on African mythology, which was interesting. There wasn't too much, there was world building, but it wasn't overly descriptive. It was more based on plot, I would say, than world building. It was quite fast paced, something was constantly happening. I wasn't keen on a particular romance in this. I felt like it was a bit rushed and maybe a bit forced, but that was probably the only downside really that I sort of found with this book. I think Amari was my favourite character. She's definitely the one who developed most, and I found her most relatable. It is graphic in terms of violence, but I saw an interview with Tomi and she said that all the violence in this is... Can you hear her purring? Look at her. What are you doing? That's Leia, by the way. Hendrix is asleep somewhere, I don't know where he is. Tomi said, I saw her on an interview and she was saying that all the violence that's depicted in this is something that's happened in real life. So I feel like this would be quite an eye-opener. Look, I'm meant to be talking about something serious here. So I feel like as if this would be quite an eye-opener for people who are not as aware as others, but it's still got everything that you want in a fantasy novel. And considering this is her debut, I feel like as if she's just going to get better and better. So roll on 2019. Next, I read Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. So I've had this on my shelf for years and years. I went through a stage where I was reading a bit and I just started buying books. And I think around about that time I saw the film of this, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to buy that. And then I just never read it. I was in the mood for a classic. I really loved this. I really loved it. I really loved it. I think it was just the right time for me to read this. So in this we follow the Dashwoods, the three Dashwood sisters and their mother. So we have Eleanor, who's the eldest, Marianne and Margaret. You don't really see a lot of Margaret, it's mainly about Eleanor and Marianne. So the story sets off that their father dies and they're forced to move from their stately home to a little cottage in Devonshire. It was Devonshire. I'm pretty sure it was Devonshire. And it follows them navigating their way through love and through friendship and society. More than anything, I would say this is about family. I absolutely love the relationship between Eleanor and Marianne and how that progressed through the story. I pretty much loved all the characters in this, even the characters that you were meant to hate. I can't even describe why I loved it because, I don't know, it just gave me this feeling inside that it was just... I don't want to say like a guilty pleasure because it's not. It's nothing like that. I don't even know. I'm looking forward to reading more. Give me more. Give me more. Finally, I have The Lost World by Michael Crichton. I finished it. I didn't think I would, but I finished it last night. Yay me. So, this is nothing like the film. Nothing at all like the film. Which, I don't know if it's well, it is a good thing because the plot is so much better than the film. I think the only things that this book shares with the film is a couple of the character names and the trailer scene. You know, when the T-Rex knocks over the trailer that they're in and it kind of gets pushed over the edge of a cliff. That's the only things that are the same. Which confused me quite a bit because before I started reading this book, I was sort of looking up about it a bit. And I read that Michael Crichton didn't really want to do a sequel to Jurassic Park. He wasn't that interested in writing a sequel. And Steven Spielberg practically begged him to do one. So then he wrote it and Spielberg didn't actually use any of it. I mean, I don't get it. It sort of starts off the same. No, it doesn't. I don't even know why I said that. So the way this starts off is it's 6 years after Jurassic Park and all that happened there. The park is destroyed, the dinosaurs are destroyed, everybody is pretty much trying to move on with their lives, including Ian Markham. But for some reason, bones and carcasses of dinosaurs are washing up on the beaches of Costa Rica. Well, what they suspect is dinosaurs. So Dr. Ian Malcolm and this other guy, who is called Richard Levine, who is so annoying in this, I just can't even. Richard Levine believe that there is this lost world where there are dinosaurs currently living. So they plan to go to Isla Sorna. Is it Isla Sorna or Isla? I think it's Isla, because they believe that this is a lost world. It's a place that's untouched by humans, is what I pretty much gathered from it, because they want to find out how dinosaurs exactly became extinct, other than the usual theories. So they're hoping to go to this island and study them. So they go to this island with a couple of other people and 2 stowaway kids, Kelly and Arby, who are pretty much the same as the kids in the first book, just with different names. Less annoying, I would say, than the kids in the first book. Obviously, things start going wrong. As you'd expect, there's someone else who wants to get on this island and use the dinosaurs on there for their own gains. Our man, Dodgson, who was in the first book, and who's in the first film but only briefly, and he's an absolute psycho in this. So, I really enjoyed it, actually. Like I said, it's nothing like the film, and I think as long as you go in expecting that, see it as a separate entity. The first book was interesting because you could see how the characters were originally intended, and it wasn't that different. I mean, it was different, but not hugely different. Whereas this is pretty much completely different. And I saw a lot of people have a particular issue with something that happens at the end of the first Jurassic Park book, which should mean that a certain character isn't in this one. But I didn't see a problem with that personally. Like, he wasn't planning on doing a sequel, so I don't see the problem. But if that's something that might annoy you a bit, I could see why it could get on your nerves. But this was a really good end to August. I didn't enjoy it as the first one, I have to admit, but I still enjoyed it massively. I'll probably reread both at some point, and hopefully I'll have gathered my thoughts together a bit better by then. But I do highly suggest both, even to just get some more dinosaurs in your life, because who doesn't need more dinosaurs? And I really needed this because I watched Jurassic World: The Fallen Kingdom, and I absolutely hated it. I really did not like it at all. I really wanted to like it, but I just couldn't. I couldn't like it. There's so much I hated about that film. I can't even say how much I hated it. So I really did need this to restore my faith. And speaking of that, I think I'm going to go and watch Jurassic Park now and eat popcorn. So I'm not going to do a TBR for September because I don't believe I'd stick to a TBR. I'm not very good at that sort of thing. I'd get a pile and then I'd start reading something and then I'd put it down and then I'd pick up something else that I wasn't even planning on reading. So I'm better off just picking up stuff as I go along. I am reading 4 books at the moment, so I might do what I'm reading, updates, and that's it, instead of a TBR. I'll probably get more videos out that way anyway, and at least they won't be super long like every video of mine seems to be, because I haven't quite got used to this yet. But anyway, enjoy your week. I hope you get lots of reading done. I hope you watch lots of films. I hope you do whatever you want to do. Spend time with your family, whatever. Just have a good week. Try not to let work get you down. I'm going to try not to. And I shall see you next time.